The recruiting industry gave us an answer we already know. The Wildcats class of 2025 is really good.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. Happy Tuesday to you all, and it is another great episode here at Locked On Kansas State. We're going to get into arguably the biggest game of the season for the women's basketball team coming up midweek in Manhattan. Want to make sure everybody, we're going to talk about it a day early so everybody has the hype and hopefully can get down there. I've already heard it's sold out, but there's more reasons to be excited for that game. We're going to talk about my hopes for what the schedule might look like because the Big 12 will be having their schedule release episode or announcement, if you will, on ESPNU later on today. But first, I want to get into some updated class rankings for the 2025 recruiting class of Kansas State. That's where we're going to start. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Well, the recruiting industry has spoken. And if you don't know really what the recruiting industry is, it's really about four main models. There's On3, ESPN, Rivals in 24/7. On3 is one of the, in my opinion, one of the more respected ones. I think On3 and 24/7 are probably the two respected in the recruiting world that I pay attention to the most. To be honest, I think it also has really good Kansas State activity and good traffic. And I think the writers of both of those sites for Kansas State are really good as well. So if you haven't checked them out as a Wildcats fan, I highly encourage you to do so. But On3 came out with their top 300, their final top 300 rankings for the class of 2025. And with no surprise, Kansas State came out looking pretty good. And some of their players appeared in the top 300. Actually, two of them appeared in the top 300 of the recruiting class that they had that signed on National Signing Day. By no surprise, Linkon came in, and he was just outside the top 50. He came in on On3's 51st national prospect. He is seen as a 4-star on that website, a 96 overall grade. Now, 24/7 Sports sees him still as a 5-star, a 98 overall grade, has him at a 30 national ranking. We're going to lean more towards the On3 stuff today because they have their official final rankings out. But just having Linkon as one of the top players in the country committing to your program is huge. And we mentioned, and I'm sure we've all talked about it, how big it is to have Linkon head over to Manhattan and stay put in the state of Kansas, not going to Oregon like the rumors and the closeness of that potentially happening days, hours, minutes before National Signing Day. He becomes a Wildcat and sticks to his promise. 6'4" and a half, 225 out of Goodland, Kansas, and hopefully he is a sight to see in a Wildcats uniform for years to come. But he comes in at number 51. Overall, he is seen around the 40th mark, so he's a little lower in the standards when it comes to On3, but I like where they put him. Just outside the top 50, showing that there's room to grow, room to improve for this player. And coming in at 6'4", 225, and he's also going to be playing spring sports in high school. There's a big question about if he'll be ready to play tight end his first year. Now, he doesn't have to be pushed right into a tight end role to be tight end 1 or anything along those lines in his first season. He doesn't have to be the messiah, if you will, for Kansas State at that position, because arguably it's probably one of the deepest positions on the roster. Coach Klieman and his coaching staff know what to do at tight ends. They're not afraid to throw the ball to tight ends, especially down in the end zone, as they are one of the best teams in the country with touchdown passes to tight ends just last season. When he gets his opportunity, though, I think it's going to be electric. And what makes me wonder is if the first opportunity he gets is maybe in a untraditional tight end spot, maybe play more of a wide receiver in that aspect because of the fact that of maybe him not having that type of size, because he is planning on not focusing more on the football. At least what I've heard, he's focusing on spring sports in his high school to finish up his high school career. More power to him. Make sure you get that. You don't get that back. So enjoy that while you can. I'm really excited to see what happens with Linkon. This entire recruiting class is what kicked off the momentum, in my opinion, for what is becoming hopefully a good season coming down the road, heading into Dublin and the rest of the way. One of the biggest surprises for this updated 2025 class, and we're going to get to it as a whole, but I have to talk about this first, was the other player that was mentioned on the On3's top 300 recruiting class. And it might come as a surprise to some, but it was Larry Porter IV, wide receiver out of Raytown, Missouri. He's seen as the second best player in the state, according to On3. And the national industry rankings had him coming in as the 800th and 830th prospect before these rankings came out. On3 has pushed him all the way up to 205. They've gave him an extra star. He's now seen as a 4-star recruit, and he has a score from On3 as a 92. That's really impressive from what they had him initially, and being able to come in and hopefully be a big-time contributor to a position group, to a wide receiver room that, quite frankly, there's an opportunity for you to make an impact in year one. I mean, there's a spot with Jace Brown being the only returning wide receiver to this wide receiver room with production, and then bringing in all these transfers who, quite frankly, as excited we are for these transfers, especially the size behind them, we don't know what type of production they're going to bring or what they're going to be able to do under this offense. I mean, it's all just a guessing game, just like these recruits coming in. A player like Larry Porter IV could find an opportunity to make an impact at some point in this season for the Wildcats. So really interesting to see what On3 did here, moving him up to 205 and moving him up from 12th in the industry rankings of the state to 2nd in the state of Missouri. The state of Missouri is no slouch when it comes to high school recruits as well, especially at the wide receiver and cornerback position. So really cool to see him move all the way up to the 2nd spot in the state, just behind just one player. And that's the same for Linkon Cure. So Kansas State has brought in the 2nd best player in the state of Kansas and the 2nd best player in the state of Missouri coming in to Manhattan in 2025. That's a really exciting thing to happen. One more player I want to get to before I get to the team as a whole, and he didn't appear on the top 300, but 24/7 Sports has him in their top 300, and that's Noah King, 4-star cornerback out of Fairfield, Ohio, 6'1.5", 195. And I think that he's going to be absolutely electric. I also think, and I mentioned this when we talked about the initial discussions of National Signing Day and talking about the whole 25, 26 players that signed. And I think Noah King has a prime opportunity to have an impact right away on this roster. Whether it is playing in the secondary right away, that is probably the easiest spot. And I mean this lightly. I don't mean this anything as shade to any players on the team whatsoever, just like as a position in the state of the game of football. I think cornerback is probably the easiest spot as a young player to make an impact right away. Just the fact of the amount of turnover that you probably have to have, the amount of substitutions that you most likely have, and because of the speed and the athleticism, you probably also have a great ability to play more of special teams and make an impact, at least a easily viewable impact, like in tackles on kickoff returns and things like that. So I think Noah King could really step up and be an interesting piece. He's 218 according to 24/7 Sports, wasn't put on the On3's top 300, although the industry ranking has him as the 270th national prospect. So maybe a little shade there from On3. Maybe there's a little bit of a chip on your shoulder for Mr. Noah King. I kind of hope so, if that's the case. I hope Noah kind of takes that as a little bit of a chip and works a little extra harder in the weight room this off season and gets ready to roll for his freshman season. Overall, though, this is the bread and butter, in my opinion, is right here. On3 has ranked this team as the 37th best recruiting class of 2025, the 37th best in the country. Now, this is up from the previous rank of 42. That's where they started. They finally made the adjustments and they moved them up to 37th. It's good for third in the Big Ten, just behind, I believe, TCU and Colorado, but not by much, by the way. They're only just a couple decimal points away from Colorado, and TCU's got them beat by about a point. TCU's at 88.6, Colorado's at 87.4, and they put Kansas State at 87.1. Rounding out the top 5 in the Big 12, you got Baylor at 87, basically 87 even, and then Utah down at 86.9. So Kansas State sitting third in the Big 12 in this recruiting class after already having a great season last year, starting off 7-1, having some great momentum, winning the Rate Bowl, and then having this great class. This is tied for the best ranking, according to On3, in the Chris Klieman era. He was also 37th for the 2023 class. All the other classes he's had, 2019, 2020, 21, 22, and 24, were not even close. We had in the 50s and 60s nationally for that. None of them have eclipsed in the 40th at all, other than this class right now and in 2023. So exciting news, right? And this helps build that narrative in this conversation that I keep talking about, how the momentum continues to build for this program. After the Rate Bowl win, after this signing day right here, bringing in the top recruit in program history, whether On3 sees him as a 4-star or 5-star, I don't care. I'm excited about him. And then we get to see him hopefully perform at a great level in Dublin and beyond, whether it's a tight end play or maybe a receiver type role. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Linkon can do. But seeing this as the 37th best team in the country recruiting wise, it just gives you that much more excitement for this program heading into the new season. Add in a great transfer portal class, and you are really talking about some good stuff. Awesome. Speaking of good stuff coming up, the schedule hits the airwaves officially at some point today. ESPNU is going to be having that. I want to talk about my hopes of what we might see of this schedule. We know where it's going to be, home and away, but I want to talk about where I'd like to see some of those games placed, especially like a senior day, things like that. We'll do that right here on Locked On Kansas State. Well, looking for tickets for your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or sports game, finding the right ticket at the right place and the right price, could be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it never can be any easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Game Time Picks personally for a while now, and I love it. The curated deals. It's simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. The best part, and it is covered by the Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they will refund you 110% of the difference for wasting your time. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So, ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. Hey, for your second listen of the day, check out Drake Toll and Locked On Big 12. They have you covered. We're also going to have a full squad show on Thursday you can catch on that channel. And this one really breaking down the full Big 12 schedule that's coming out today. But I want to get your thoughts on it right away as well. The Big 12 championship is also going to have a rematch for Arizona State and Iowa State. That's like one of the only leaks that have came out. That's exciting. And that's going to happen on November 1st. But the Big 12 schedule reveal is happening on ESPNU at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern. It's going to be on ESPNU and ESPN Plus. So be sure to check that out. It's going to be the first time the Big 12 is doing this. And I'm glad they're finally doing it. They're taking a step from some of the other power conferences like the Big 10 and the SEC that have been doing this for quite some time. The NFL started doing this schedule release, making it more like a full program, a full national holiday, if you will, getting a little bit of excitement for the fans of the sport, not just throwing it out on social media or putting on a graphic and telling fans to have fun, making it more of a spectacle. I think that's a really good idea for the sport and for the conference as a whole. So be sure to check that out, give them your support, and obviously see where the Wildcats are playing at what dates and what time. We obviously know what is happening for the first 4 games of the season. And one of them is technically a Big 12 conference game. So we already know one of them. So there's one leak, if you will, but we've known it for quite some time. They're going to be playing the Iowa State Cyclones on August 23rd in Dublin, Ireland at Avia Stadium. We've known that for a while. I mean, you can't really wait until February to tell a game that's happening in Dublin and expect not to have the tickets, right? So that one's happening. We're going to have the two past winners of the Pop-Tart Bowl taking it on in Dublin, Ireland. It's going to be an exciting game. And Farmageddon, that's turning into a great rivalry. We just saw with college basketball winning in Ames, and now we get to find a way to beat the Cyclones in Ireland. We also know that on the 30th, they're going to be playing their first game at home at Bill Snyder Family Stadium, taking on the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. That's an FBS school. And then they continue their non-conference schedule on the 6th of September back at home against the Army Black Knights. If they're anything like what they were last year, that could be a tough game. That could be a really tough and interesting game. And then they finish their non-conference schedule on Saturday, September 30th against a Big 12 opponent, but it is considered non-conference because this game was scheduled before Arizona joined the Big 12. They'll take on the Wildcats in Arizona Stadium in Tucson on September 13th. That's all we know as of right now. We will have every other answer in just a few hours. If you might be listening to this before 10 o'clock Eastern Central, or 10 o'clock a.m. Central, 11 o'clock Eastern, or you may be seeing this after, so you might already have the news, but this is my hopes to where they are. And for the record, I have no idea. I don't believe in any of the other leaks unless they come from official sources. The one about the Big 12 championship game I mentioned came from Pete Thamel. He's ESPN senior insider, so I take that one kind of as gospel. But none of came out for Kansas State that I have really seen that I really believe. And there's really no use searching the web for it now when it's going to come out in just a few hours. But we know our opponents. We know that we are going to go on the road and take on the Baylor Bears, the Kansas Jayhawks, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and the Utah Utes. That's our 4 away games in conference. And then, of course, we also have, technically, we have 5 home games, if you will, because the Iowa State Cyclones, according to what I'm seeing, Kansas State is considered the home team. And then we also have home games against the Colorado Buffaloes, Texas Tech Red Raiders, TCU Horned Frogs, and UCF Knights. I like this schedule. I like this conference schedule. When I'm looking right at it, it shows me great potential. And I really do think that this screams prime example to be in the Big 12 championship. And why I picked the opponent to be BYU, that I've said a couple times in past shows, is because Kansas State doesn't play them. So I think both teams will wind up meeting in the Big 12 championship game. That's my prediction as of right now. Will it change? Possibly, but not likely as of right now. What I would really like to see is teams like the Oklahoma State Cowboys and the Baylor Bears, both who, for different reasons compared to last season, I would like to see us play them as early as possible. Let me explain. Baylor got off to a not so good start last season, but they were red hot towards the end of the season. I have this weird feeling that may happen again. Baylor might find lightning in a bottle. Maybe David Randa's job is on the line yet again, and they have to find lightning in a bottle one more time, and it happens towards the second half. I want to be on that left side of it. I want to be on the side where they're looking for lightning in a bottle, and that means we play them early in the season. So I want to go and head into McLean Stadium in Waco. I want to do that as early as possible. If I can do that in September or early October, I'd be very happy with that conversation. And it's on the road as well. So I like getting my road games out of the way. Middle of the season, fresh off a non-conference schedule, which could be a tough non-conference schedule. Don't get me wrong, but might as well get those tough ones out of the way. I like my home games towards the end. I really do. And it just gives you that good feeling of hopefully being able to push momentum into a college football playoff bid. I also want to see us go to Boone Pickens Stadium in Stillwater early, in same kind of concept like Baylor, but for different reasons. Oklahoma State never got hot last year. They were one of the worst teams in all of Power 4, and they were probably the most, surprisingly bad teams. You got to think they're going to turn that one around. With the parity of the Big 12, there's always going to be a team that has to falter. And last year was Oklahoma State. Utah was kind of that way as well at some points. I don't want to be on the wrong side of that when it's all said and done. When they finally figure it out or turn it around. You would expect if they're going to turn around at any point, it would be later on when adjustments are made. So kind of in the same way of Baylor, I want to face them as early as possible. So maybe we can get on the good side before some of those adjustments are made. Right? We also play Utah on the road. We just talked about that. Utah had a weird season. What's going to happen with them? We play 3 of the road games that we face, with the exception of the game in Kansas, right? The game in Lawrence. We all know that's going to be a fun one. That's going to be wild. Who knows if they're going to put it on rivalry week? We'll see what happens there. But with the exception of that one, all of the games, I guess you could really put Kansas in this conversation as well. All of the games that we've faced on the road, those teams have something to prove. Kansas, what they were starting off of last season and then kind of faltered out, and they were really close to finding themselves in a Big 12 championship conversation at one time. Baylor, as we mentioned, found lightning in a bottle fast. Utah had, for a longest time have been favorites in this conference, and then all these injuries and all those things happened. And of course, Oklahoma State with the season they had. So at least 3 of those 4 games, because I'd like to see Kansas maybe on rivalry week. I'd like to see 3 of those 4 road games happen as early as possible. And my hopes for senior night, the last game of the season, or however you want to do senior night, I want it to be against TCU, because that would give me some 2022 Big 12 championship feelings. Now, I know just based on how 22 went, and obviously winning the Big 12 against TCU, remember we shut them down in the Big 12 championship game, even though they still made it to the national championship game. It'd be really cool to see that one happen. I would love for that to happen, to be completely honest with you. So that's where I'm feeling right now for the schedule hopes. I have no idea what we're going to see. I have no idea what's going to happen, but we're definitely going to break it down when it's all said and done. Remember that Big 12 championship game, 31-28. I mean, that'd be a fun senior game. I think it really would be. All right, let's wrap up this show with some women's basketball talk. I think this could be the biggest game of the season from right now, from what we've already seen and what we have already heading into the March Madness pregame, if you will. We're really close, but I think this might be a turning point, an inflection point for this team right now. Let's talk about that right here on Locked On Kansas State. And welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. They're going to take on number 9 ranked TCU on Wednesday night. It is going to be a battle. 6:30 Central Time tip-off. They're going to put that one, I believe it's on ESPNU. I believe that's where they have it. No, they have it on ESPN Plus, which is shocking, by the way. They need that. This should have been a game that was at least on ESPN2, ESPNU. They had to find a way to put this on national television. Number 9 TCU taking on number 12 Kansas State. And what a dreadful what a disrespectful thing, putting them outside the top 10 yet again. I know they lost to Colorado, but what they did over the last couple of games against Iowa State and Kansas, I can't believe they had the nerve to push them down another 3 spots. This will be the winner will take sole possession over the Big 12 for the top seed in the conference, and most likely will hold it the rest of the way into the Big 12 tournament play. This is a huge game. This has huge repercussions on both sides. This could be the changing of potentially making Kansas State a 2 or potentially a 1 seed when it's all said and done. Like if they continue the roll, if Kansas State beats TCU and they continue to make a big run in the Big 12, they might be a 1 seed. But this would definitely push them into the 2 conversation for sure if they can win this one. And definitely by next week would give them a single digit next to their name. Like, it'd have to happen, right? If you're beat the number 9 team, you're already ranked number 12, you got to find a way to get them in the top 10. I feel like it's so disrespectful that it's already happened. TCU is a great team, though. This by comparison of recent games. Kansas State had that overtime win against Iowa State just about a week ago on the 30th of January. They won 87-79 in overtime. Kansas State looked really good, and that was their first game without first home game without Ayoka Lee. They found a way to get it done. They had a statement game. They figured it out, and obviously they rolled the next game against Kansas. TCU also played Iowa State recently. They won 82-69. So, and when you look at it like that, if you're just looking at it on paper, if you haven't seen either of these two teams play so far this year, you would see them as pretty comparable. And to be completely honest, they are. When they're both healthy, they're pretty comparable. But as we know, Kansas State will be without Ayoka Lee, and TCU has the opportunity to take advantage of that. Haley Van Leith is going to be a player to watch out for sure. You've seen her play. If you are a fan of women's basketball, you have seen her for quite some time play with Louisville in her career. She went to LSU for a season, and then she finally transferred into the Big 12 to play for the Horned Frogs this past season. In her 23 games so far this season, she leads the team 18.7 points per game. She also averages almost 6 assists per game and close to 5 rebounds. She is a very good player and probably will be a player that is drafted in the WNBA after the season is all said and done. She is probably the X factor. She is probably the star player that you have to watch when they are talking for the keys to victory for both teams. When they talk about Kansas State, they're going to probably start and spotlight Van Leith as the player to make sure you take care of. But I do think there is one more player that you have to pay attention to, and that's their center, their 6'7" senior from Liberty Hill, Texas. That's Sedona Price. And I think that she is the player that if you can shut down, just like they did with Crooks of Iowa State, and they really didn't shut her down, but they stopped her enough to take control of the game. But if they can find a way to do the same thing of Sedona Price and shut her down, and it might be a different way they do it, I think they have a great chance at not only winning this game, but having a statement victory against a top 10 opponent. Sedona Price has had amazing games over the past couple weeks. She had 24 points and 14 rebounds against the 25th ranked Baylor team. She had 22 points and 13 rebounds against Oklahoma State. She had 27 points against UCF. She puts a lot of points up, and she does it very efficiently. She shoots usually over 50%, close to 60 to 65% from the field most of her games. It is very impressive. But one thing that she does that is not so effective, and Kansas State could capitalize on it right away if they're smart, based on the aggressive guard play that they've had, especially lately, is get her in foul trouble. In her latest game against Iowa State, she had 5 fouls. She was fouled out pretty quickly. She only played 19 minutes of the game. She had to sit on the bench for quite some time. And in those 19 minutes, we were talking about how she scores 24, 27 points. She was held scoreless this past Sunday against Iowa State. Only had 3 assists, 1 rebound. She had 2 turnovers and 5 fouls. If you can find a way to do that with the way that you play with your centers by rotation, if you could find a way to drive and be aggressive on Price and make Van Leith the only player that can make big plays, I think you're in for a really good game on Wednesday night. It's going to be loud. It's sold out in Manhattan. It's going to be a really good game. Be sure to tune in on ESPN Plus. Make sure that you are doing everything you can to support these ladies, because they are cooking and they are going to need all the help they can get as we continue to wait for Ayoka Lee. But if they can win this game, without Ayoka Lee, just think about the chances this team has to make a deep run and win potentially the first national championship in program history when she returns to the team. How exciting, right? Let me know your score predictions in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite recruit in the 2025 class? How about this one? Tell me your favorite that's not Lincoln Cure, because I feel like that's the easy answer. And then who do you want to play on senior night when the new schedule comes out? Try to be no cheating. If you already know the schedule, tell me who you wanted anyways, right? Let me know in the comment description below, all that good stuff. And until then, please like the video, please subscribe. And this has been Locked On Kansas State.